The days in Aleppo, Iman-wise, I think those days were the days that I was the highest in Iman up until now in my entire life. And they have established Syrian Salvation Government. This was a turning point because now you have started giving service to the civilians that were living in your areas. So the people start liking the Mujahideen. So people started supporting the Mujahideen. People started supporting the leadership. That al-Mubin operations room was established, which included every fighting faction in Idlib. The Mujahideen and the leadership have decided that we need to be commanded by one command operation room. Everyone who wants to fight in Idlib has to be in this operations room. Other than that, they can't be fighting. Since 2016, the Mujahideen were working already in developing drones and drone technology with their own resources. They have established also now a military academy to train and develop their leadership, their commanders. The Mujahideen were training naval forces in 2016 in lakesides and riversides in Idlib. Allah Azza wa Jalla gives you the order, just as He gives you the order to pray. Allah Azza wa Jalla orders you to prepare. As long as you prepare, Allah will bring the asbab. He said there is no stopping anymore. Inshallah, in 1 week we will pray together in Damascus.
Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers, sisters and friends all around the world, and welcome to the latest episode of the Stand4Palestine podcast. This being the second part of a two-part series with a very special brother of ours who is currently in Bilad al-Sham in Syria, brother Abdussamed Dagul, a journalist and war reporter from the Syrian front for the last 10 plus years, who we did an episode with a couple of weeks ago, which received some fantastic feedback, some really wonderful feedback from our brothers and sisters all around the world. And we are here to do a part two of that. My dear brother Abdul Samad, assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you for having me.
Well, yeah, my dear brother. Before we get started, everyone, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the Stand4Palestine podcast or the Stand4Palestine page on YouTube channel, and to follow us on all our social media channels, especially Facebook and Instagram, and to share the little shorts and clips that we share, as well as this longer podcast episode with all your friends, families, and networks, inshallah. We are got some fantastic conversations coming up, and this is just another in a series of very important discussions that we are having. Now, if those people who have not checked out the first episode, make sure that you do. We'll have it in the description to this particular episode, inshallah. Very riveting listening. It was all about the dark days and the challenges faced in the lead up to the fall of Aleppo during the Syrian revolution and its early days, and that is where we pick things up. My dear brother Abdul Samad,
Yes.
there's been some great feedback to your first episode. We really had a lot of people saying, alhamdulillah, that it was very eye-opening to hear from someone who was involved in the struggle itself, and right in the thick of it. And so where we'd love to pick up is where we left off, which was that the siege of Aleppo happened and Aleppo fell. It fell back to government forces, and now the Mujahideen, the Syrian revolutionaries, were confronted with quite a serious situation. But before we go to that, just tell me a little bit, very succinctly, if you can, what were the days in Aleppo like for yourself and the people besieged there? Just give us a quick overview on how you would describe that.
For myself, the days in Aleppo, I mean, Iman-wise, I think those days were the days that I was the highest in Iman up until now in my entire life. Because that's how a mu'min or a Muslim is in difficult situations. I'm sure right now our brothers and sisters are going through the same feelings in Gaza. They are probably in the highest of Iman levels that they were ever in. It was really beautiful days, whereas people were talking to us from outside and were very worried for us, but we were not worried because we trusted Allah's plan. And if Allah had written for us to be martyred there, to be killed there, then that was Allah's plan for us, and we were pleased with whatever Allah had written for us. Alhamdulillah. In general, of course, it was very difficult times for the people and us, especially towards the last months, especially to the fourth and fifth month. The situation with the food got very difficult. you know, and there was no petrol or you know, diesel or fuel, yani, to drive the cars. Our car in the
So,
first month we got.
it was a real full-fledged siege. Like, to tell us a little bit about that in terms of the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrian army. What did they do exactly in that regard?
Yes, of course. Basically, the Mujahideen were very weak inside the city of Aleppo. They were controlling from, I think, early 2013, let me not be wrong, or 12. They were controlling some parts of the city, inside the city, the southern and the western parts of the city. But the rest of the city, the richer areas, the bigger areas, were still controlled by the Assad regime, supported by Russia and Iran. And it was very crazy. Even the guarding positions of the Mujahideen, between them and the positions of the Iranian and Russian-backed Assad militants, were only at some places only from one building to another building. They were basically guarding their positions from one window to the other window. You could hear in the nighttime how the soldiers of the enemy are talking to each other. You could smell when they cook. You could smell what they cook and when they cook, and it was very close. The fronts to each other. It was close combat. It was a city warfare, and also there were many snipers. There were in Aleppo city. It was the only place that I saw it. In Aleppo city, there were streets. It was covered by what's it called? By, you know, the tent fabric, the plastic fabric, or whatever you call it. You know, the lorries used to cover
the tarps.
Yes. It was covered, so the sniper couldn't see the street where the people, the civilians are walking, because the snipers used to target anything and everything, even little children. I saw many children having headshots and neck shots coming into the hospital because they were shot by snipers while they were playing, the kids, you know. So it was very close combat battle inside the city of Aleppo. And inside the city of Aleppo, the Mujahideen were not really strong. So what happened is basically the Russians decided to take over Aleppo totally and to push out the rebel forces, or the Mujahideen, from inside the city. So they started a full-on offensive. So first, Aleppo got besieged from four sides. It was totally encircled for 3 months. There was 2 sieges. So the first 3 months, the people were besieged. We were outside. And we were following the battles of the breakage of the siege. The Mujahideen had started and launched offensives to try to break the siege, to open up the siege on the people in Aleppo, which was more than 250,000 people, civilians living inside those areas. And inside those areas, they were still controlled by the Mujahideen while they were besieged, basically. So the offensive was successful. The siege broke, and the Mujahideen attacked from an axis which they never attacked before from, and they have broken through the military bases of the Russians. They've broken through those areas, Ramusa and Kulliyat al-Midfa'iyya, and those areas. They are very military areas, and they are like bases. And the enemy was not expecting the Mujahideen to attack from those areas, because this was considered the stronghold of the Russians and the Iranians. And they've broken through it. Allah has opened up to them those areas, and there was now a small passage which was going in and out to Aleppo city. So people who were very worried about the situation in Aleppo, they managed to leave Aleppo. And the people who were, who had family members maybe inside Aleppo, they wanted to enter the Aleppo city. And us as reporters, we wanted to go in, and we were curious what's going on inside Aleppo. How did the people, make up with the siege, and how the situation is. And of course, we were very positive that the Mujahideen will continue their offensive, and that they will, even take larger parts of the city, which was not the case. We went in. After 1 day, we got the news that the Russians have taken back all those areas again. The Mujahideen had to, pull out from those areas, and that means we are besieged now. and you could see the enemy forces shooting bullets in the air in the
Subhanallah.
night and celebrating that they have that they have enclaved Aleppo city back again. And that siege
this
took
was
for 4.5 months.
Was that just the Russians? Were Russian troops on the ground? Was that Russian Air Force plus Iranian militias plus Syrian army forces? How would you describe the sort of the forces that took the city of Aleppo?
In Aleppo, the main force was the Iranians on the ground. The Iranians, and also Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah, and Hashdi Sha'bi from Iraq, and Fatimiyun from Afghanistan, and Zainabiyun from Pakistan. All those Iranian mercenaries that Iran is using, and also the Republican Guard of Iran, of course, the commanders of Qasim Soleimani, La'natullahi alayh, he was leading the Iranian offensive on Aleppo city, and also Russian Air Force. Of course, Russian Air Force was supporting this battle full on. The Russians, in fact, have used the first time bunker buster bombs in the city of Aleppo in the siege of Aleppo. This is when we felt an earthquake when the first bunker bomb, the bunker buster bomb hit. We felt earthquakes. We felt little earthquakes. The whole earth and the whole buildings, kilometers away from where the bomb hit, actually, we were feeling little earthquakes. So basically, it was a Russian-Iranian led offensive, supporting the on the ground forces of the Assad militants.
So how did the siege then come to a culmination? So eventually it led to some sort of a truce, some sort of a ceasefire, some sort of a deal where the Mujahideen were moved out into Idlib, which is where obviously we want to follow the story. So how did things go from Aleppo to Idlib? Describe that to us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey got involved. Turkey and Qatar got involved. Turkey and Qatar tried to, come to a truce with Iran and Russia to, because even before in other sieges, like sieges in Dar'a, Ghouta, in Homs, all those sieges that we've most likely heard about before Aleppo in also similar ways. They got, truce was made, and they got removed with the green buses, those very famous green buses. So basically, Turkey and Qatar got involved. They were trying to talk to Russia and Iran and make any sense and reason with them with regards to the situation, and say, let's stop this battle and let's get the people out of Aleppo. Khalas, if it's what you want Aleppo, let's remove the people of Aleppo. And the Mujahideen, they were still continuing trying to break the siege and trying to solve the situation militarily, because they were not really believing in a political solution at that time. So they were still continuing to carry on the battle to try to break the siege.
So the agreement happens, and I think this is somewhere in early 2017, if I'm not mistaken, because the siege was sort of from December 2016. You said it was 3 or 4 months, so March, April, sort of 2017, and so the agreement is made to take people in these buses, and that includes the Mujahideen, right? That was including the Mujahideen and their families and whoever was besieged in Aleppo. Is that accurate?
Yes, it was. The siege started late August until it was until the 22nd of December. In 22nd of December, 2016, basically late 2016, early 2017 at that time range, when the Aleppo siege was finished and the agreement was done. And
right, so the agreement was actually made in late December. The siege actually started then, yes, because I remember the battles happened in December to try and break out. Yes.
Yes, so the deal was made basically, and Iran was very unhappy with the deal. Iran's intention was to totally erase the people in Aleppo, the people who have decided to raise against them and to resist against them and their cause and their project in Syria. So Iran was very unhappy with the agreement because Iran got excluded of the agreement. The agreement was between Russia, Qatar, and Turkey. And so even when the agreement happened, Iran was still bombing crazy the city of Aleppo, the city of Aleppo. Yeah, just these information are very important for the Muslim Ummah to understand. That's why I'm trying to really focus on those things, because today there is this what's it called, the axis of resistance, and that Iran is the only one that helps Palestine and Gaza and all that, all this this wrong understanding and the wrong propaganda which Iran is trying to push anyway, and try to excuse their existence in the Middle East, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and everywhere else. So this is important for the Muslim Ummah to understand the real face of Iran and the Shia militias. So anyway, the deal was made. The deal was made, and the bosses got ready. Of course, the UN was overlooking the whole, the whole
The transfer of people. Yep.
yeah, the whole transition and the whole evacuation operations. The Russians, we actually saw Russian soldiers. I actually saw Russian soldiers speaking Arabic to us, stopping the buses, looking inside the buses,
Wow.
what was inside the buses and stuff. And of course, we because we were foreigners and we were journalists, because these entities, they are always going after the journalists which are exposing their real faces to the world. So we were basically hiding in cars of some family members from the Aleppan people, from the locals. We asked them to hide inside their cars under blankets and under all their clothes that they were still taking with them out to Idlib.
Incredible.
And it was very cold. I remember the back glass of the car. I was sitting right in the back in a little bus. And the back window was broken because of the war, because of the bombs and the shrapnel pieces and everything. And it was such a cold day. It was the first day it was snowing, and I was wearing a very thick jacket that I just bought from a second-hand shop inside Aleppo, because I went in with exactly a shirt like this, and I came out with a jacket. I went in with the intention it's gonna be just a few hour trip maximum. We're gonna stay a night there, and then I'm gonna go back home to Idlib. And alhamdulillah, Allah had other plans for us. Walillah alhamd. And so the snow, it was like falling inside my neck from the back window, and it was so cold. It was
incredible.
It was it took like 3 to 5 days to the evacuation process. We decided to leave with the last batch of people, just to be able to report everything in the best way and form. And alhamdulillah, Allah has allowed us to be evacuated of Aleppo only after a few years to turn back to cleanse of those enemy forces, alhamdulillah. And this is when we came back to Idlib, and the people of Aleppo came back to Idlib.
So let's talk about Idlib then. So you get there. The Mujahideen had been in charge of Idlib for some time. It had been held since, I think, 2015 by rebel forces. Is that correct, broadly?
Yes.
Yeah. And so tell us about the early days of Idlib. So what was it like for all these hundreds of thousands of people to arrive into that province? And did anyone know at that time that it could be the start of something so special? Or was it really just about survival and let's just see what happens? Was there any sense that the being pushed into this place or this part of Syria could be the start of something? Or did that all happen later once there was a chance to regroup and to think about the possibilities?
I mean, I think the leadership had plans already. They had plans like that. They had plans to take advantage of the situation that every revolutionary and rebellious people against this criminal Assad regime, that they were pushed and forced to Idlib from all governments of Syria, from Deir ez-Zor to Raqqa to Tabqa to Hasaka to Damascus, every area of Damascus, of Homs, Hama, and the people of Idlib were there also, and the people of Aleppo now also coming to it. So everyone who were ready to leave their homes and their countries and everything that they were owning in this life, just for not to be ruled and governed by this criminal Assad regime, had come now to Idlib. So it was a big opportunity, for the leadership and of the Mujahideen to be smart enough and to try take advantage of the situation. So basically, from 2015 to 2017, the situation in Idlib was a bit more. It was a bit more chaotic. It was a bit more every area was a bit controlled by this guy and that guy. Basically, Fath al-Mubin was the first operations room the Mujahideen ever established, which was the reason for the liberation of Idlib. Fath al-Mubin operations room, which was containing 10 or 15 big groups like Ahrar al-Sham, al-Nusra Front at that time, and other FSA groups, including those groups. And so they were now running Idlib. But in 2017, not just Aleppo was the first place to be evacuated. Now, after Aleppo, after the regime and Russia and Iran saw that this works out, we can make deals, we can evacuate the people in green buses. They've implemented the same project or the same strategy on many other areas after Aleppo. Aleppo was the first place, if I'm not wrong. After that, then Ghouta happened, then Dar'a happened, and then Homs happened. So all these people were now brought by green buses, evacuated into Idlib. So what are they going to do in Idlib now? In Idlib, they don't have much to live and survive. So it was always a survival fight, a battle for survival. So when humans are in this situation, they don't hesitate to sacrifice everything, because they don't have much left anyway. They don't have much left anyway. So this is when the leadership took the advantage. They have formed HTS. They have tried to unite many of the groups into one body. And even after that, in 2019, the battles of 2018-19, where the Russians started their big offensive to the south of Idlib.
We'll definitely get to that. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about how that regrouping happened. Obviously, there's some controversy around that, right? In terms of that there was, actual fights between various factions in order for that centralization to happen. Is that how you see it? That it just had to happen for there to be any chance of consolidation and fighting against the government? How would you describe that sort of, I guess, that unification process where bit by bit, many of the smaller factions were brought into the, let's call it the HTS umbrella? How would you describe that process?
Look, it's not a nice process, but it happened many times in Islamic history. If we read a little bit the books of the history of Islamic history, it's called taghallub, toppling, and sometimes, to unite, all the fighting factions, the Muslim fighting factions, unfortunately, this is the way. I think today.
So you don't have any. I would call it illusions that it was not pretty at times, because that's the impression everyone has. And I think if that's how it is, then that's how it is. I think that's how we should say it. But it was a bit nasty, wasn't it? From time to time, there was like fighting amongst the Mujahideen, and
of course, it was a big fitna. It was a big fitna for the Muslims. It was a big fitna for the Muslims, and that was one of the reasons why the Ummah also kind of gave up hope in the Syrian revolution, because they were seeing the Muslims, the Mujahideen are fighting each other, and factions are fighting each other for power, and the Muslims. That's why this is when it started in 2017. This is when it started, when the Muslim Ummah outside, who was following the Syrian revolution closely, they kind of gave up hope, because then ISIS came, and then ISIS started doing all these mad things, and then they started doing attacks in Europe and wherever, and then the factions were fighting each other, and that. So the Muslim Ummah, who is sitting outside and doesn't get the full picture from on the ground, they were thinking, of course, rightly so, thinking like, man, this is another lost case, lost hope in Syria. This is when
charity.
That happened,
like. there was
Exactly.
internal fighting and consolidation. I mean, that's really refreshing to hear, because sometimes I guess we don't hear that sort of honesty. Like, people aren't sort of brave enough to just say it for what it is. And I think it's okay. Like, these things happen. And the point that you made about history, the history is not exactly pretty. Many good things came after some very nasty moments. And I think for all of us who've supported the Syrian revolution, I think we've got to be honest enough to say that at times the way that things were done, or that what happened, was not necessarily the nicest, but it is what it is. Like,
The
that's just how
Sahaba
the stuff
fought.
works.
The Sahaba
Yeah,
fought,
subhanAllah,
and
absolutely.
this doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right, and it's not an excuse for you as an Islamic faction and a military group today. It doesn't give you an excuse now to go and fight other Muslim parties. It doesn't, But even Sahaba fought, the best of people. The best of people who have walked this earth, they have fought each other. There was fitan, there was trials and tribulations, and they fought each other, this is human nature, yani. And I'm not saying it was right. For me, especially, it was very nasty times. It was big fitna, where we had to just sit back home and think like, man, this is not what I came here for. I didn't leave
Yeah,
everything to come here,
subhanAllah,
and in the end of the day, then now to watch how
subhanAllah.
Muslims are fighting each other and spilling each
Yeah.
other's blood. It was a big fitna.
Yeah.
It was a big fitna.
What were some of the key turning points in those years? So before the battles against the Russians in Idlib, what were some of the key points that you would note in those couple of years after 2017? Are there any key moments that you recall that really helped turn the tide towards decentralization? Is there anything
Yes,
that
of
comes to
course.
mind in that regard?
Establishing the Syrian Salvation Government, the government of Idlib, which was supported by HTS, and first of all, the establishment of HTS. HTS was established to unite, Al-Nusra Front, which was now Jabhat Fatih Sham, and had broken ties from Al-Qaeda, and then Ahrar al-Sham, Nur al-Din Zinki, and many of those big factions which united now in HTS. Some of the the unification, it didn't really work out, but in the end of the day, it was a general picture of like the strongest rebel groups
Coming together.
have united under HTS. Now HTS said, look, we need to govern those areas that we are controlling. It has to be a governing body, and this governing body has to be by civilians, not by military people, because we military people, we don't understand much how to administrate these people, they say to themselves. So they said, look, let's just make a Majlis Shura, a Shura council, and see who are the wise people of Idlib, who are the academic people of Idlib, not meaning the locals of Idlib, meaning the people who are now living in Idlib, including locals of Idlib, including people who have now sought refuge in Idlib from other areas like Deir ez-Zor, Dar'a, Homs, Hama, and Damascus. So they have chosen all those people, and they have made, I think, 8 ministries. It was at that time, and they have established Syrian Salvation Government with a president, and this helped them a lot. This was a turning point, because now you have started giving service to the civilians that were living in your areas. It has come to a point. It has come to a point that the areas which was halfway enclaved, Idlib had the only breathing way was Turkish border to the north. Other than that, Idlib had nothing. Idlib has no petrol fields. Idlib has no gas fields. Idlib has no natural resources except olive oil, except olive trees. So even considering that, when you had compared 2020 Idlib to the regime-controlled areas, which had gas pipelines, which had oil fields, which had borders open to Iraq, to Lebanon, to Jordan, which had the sea, also the seaports of Tartus and everywhere. So it had the borders to the whole world. It could import stuff easily from China, from America, from the whole world.
Sure.
It could have important stuff, if it was not up to the sanctions, of course. But so if you had compared at that time the the standard, the standard of life between Idlib and regime controlled areas, Idlib was much better. People were paying for a gas canister, for cooking gas, for a canister in the Assad regime controlled areas, $50, whereas we were buying it in Idlib for $12. Look at the huge difference. So when the Mujahideen started giving service to the people and to the locals, which was more than 4.5 million people were living at that time under Mujahideen controlled areas in Idlib, so the people start liking the Mujahideen. So people started supporting the Mujahideens. People started supporting the leadership that the government's already trying to do its best. They are trying to fix the highways. They are trying to the university. In 2018, I made a report about the Idlib University. The University of Idlib in 2018 had 15,000 students.
Incredible. Yeah.
You're halfway enclaved. You're in a battle. You have zero resources. You're getting pounded on weekly basis by Russia and Iran into Idlib, and you're still able to administrate the people. You're still able to yes.
That's incredible. So what you're talking about is an established functioning government that was looking after the affairs of the people, basically, in Idlib.
Yes, exactly.
Tell us a little bit then about those battles, right? And the bombing campaigns by Russia, Iran, the Syrian government. Tell us a little bit about, notwithstanding this government sort of that was established, how from time to time these battles happen, and tell us about the major, really crucial time in sort of 2019, I think, when things could have gotten, the revolution could have been lost forever. Tell us about that sort of very critical moment. And would you say that those were sort of the darkest days in the Idlib phase?
Yes, of course. It was very difficult times. The Russians had decided to start a full-on, large-scale offensive on to the areas of Idlib, which started in Kafran Buda, Khan Sheikhoun in the south, very south, on the borderline of northern Hama to southern Idlib. They've started from there their large-scale offensive and their scorched earth policy. This is I think this was the most intense time that Russia really used all its aerial force onto Idlib. And even the defense minister of Russia has committed himself in a press conference that they have tried out new weapons, 256 new weapons in Idlib in Syria. So they were literally trying out every new technology, new development in their military, setup onto Idlib, onto Syria. Basically, this is when they started using bunker buster bombs. This is when they started using the drone technology. This is when they started using, laser guided missiles, where they were literally targeting Mujahideen driving on motorbikes. And pinpoint targeting them, and most of the times hitting them, unfortunately. So, of course, those were the darkest days, because large and vast lands were lost by the Mujahideen in a very, very intense battle, which was for more than 300 days. It was ongoing for more than 300 days. Basically, a whole year, our life was front lines and battles and reporting from the battles, being injured, being this, losing that, not being able to go home, see your family. It was intense times from 2019 until 2020.
Yeah. And so how did that end? How did that phase come to an end? Again, was there some sort of agreement? Did the Turkish government come in on the side of, my understanding is that the Turkish military eventually intervened on the side of the revolutionaries. How do you sort of see that? What would you say about that?
Yes, because the huge wave of refugees have started now going to the Turkish border sites, because now Idlib was getting smaller and smaller, and Russian and Iranian backed regime forces have reached now the outskirts of the Idlib city. They have reached 8 kilometers close to the city of Idlib, and the city of Idlib was just about to fall. And they were also attacking from the northern Latakia side, which was the hills of Kebene. I don't know if you heard it. It's very famous point of the Mujahideen. The hills of Kebene. Russia was actually sending their own like Spetsnaz forces and their own Wagner forces, like their most
Wow,
special
incredible.
groups. They were
Mercenaries and groups, yeah.
sending them on the ground to attack the Mujahideen in the hills of Kibene. The problem is about the hills of Kibene is a very strategic hilltop. If the hilltop of Kibene had fallen to the hands of Russia or the Russian-backed Assad militants, then they would have been able to see the whole controlled areas, half of the controlled areas by the Mujahideen, until the Turkish border. It's a very strategic hilltop that overlooks maybe 40% of the area of Idlib, the western parts of Idlib, the areas of Jisr Shughur and Darkush, up until Harem. It reaches up until the Turkish border lines, basically. There was intense battles, very intense battles. More than 8,000 Mujahideen, the most special forces of the Mujahideen, were killed in those battles. And it was very hard times. And this is when Turkey got involved because of the huge influx of refugees to their borders. Nearly 200,000 people were at the borders of Turkey, were asking for Turkey to open up the borders, and that they halas, it's over, and they want to run away from this war, and they had enough. And this is when Turkey had to get involved, and Turkey got involved, and Turkey actually, for a whole day, they have used the Bayraktar, and they hit like more than 50-60 targets, if not more, and they have pinpoint targeted every enemy forces that were trying to advance on the Saraqib and Nerab borderline. And the Mujahideen also were still fighting the battle, trying to stop the transgression of the enemy forces. And also they have managed to take back some of the strategic villages which was covering the city of Idlib, like Nerab and Qumainas and San, on all those areas in basically the east of Idlib towards Saraqib. And
so how long did this intervention take? How long did Turkey's intervention last, and how did it sort of change, if it changed, the trajectory of what was going on in Idlib?
Oh, that was very important, because also the deals of Asitana and Sochi was going on at that time, and Turkey was pointed to be the guarantor for the Syrian rebel forces, basically. So those deals were not implemented by Russia, not at all, because according to those deals, the borderlines of the battles to stop and for de-escalation zone and all that was right in the south of Idlib, which was in Khan Sheikhun, in all those areas. So basically, what Russia did is Russia made a deal on the table, and then betrayed its own deal and started a full-on offensive. So that's why also it gave a stronger hand to Turkey on the political table and said, look, here and stop. We made a deal. You agreed to this points of the deal, and you have crossed the borderlines of this deal. Now you have to stop, because I'm having a big problem with the refugee influx that is coming towards Turkey. I'm struggling myself. I already have nearly 3 or 4 million Syrians in Turkey, seeking refuge in Turkey. And I can't have more than that. So this is when Turkey got even involved militarily for like a week or so. They have started bombing with Bayraktar drones, even some of the Russian forces there. So, and this is when it came to halt.
Yeah, and I mean, this, I remember, this was quite a flashpoint, isn't it? Because the idea of a full-blown war between Turkey and Russia, none of the powers in the world would want that. I mean, that would be very destabilizing and cause a lot of issues in multiple places.
Yes, for sure, 100%. It wouldn't have caused a battle, a full-on battle, war between them, I think. But because Turkey and Russia's relationship is kind of like that. Even Turkey in 2014 or 15, if I'm not wrong, they have downed a Russian plane in the north of Latakia because it has crossed into Turkish airspace, and they've downed, and it was a big drama again. But this is Turkey and Russia's relationship. I think it was like a love-hate relationship, kind of, because Russia doesn't understand another language. Russia, you have to deal with him diplomatically. If he doesn't understand from diplomacy, you have to show him your teeth. Basically,
would you agree that Turkey's intervention was very self-motivated. So it wasn't necessarily to save the Syrian revolution. It was to secure its own interests, and that happened to overlap with the interests of the Syrian rebels. Is that a fair assessment, or was there something motivating? I
100%,
mean, yeah.
100%, 100%. It was to be fair, it had nothing to do with the cause of the Ummah. Turkey is a sovereign state. Turkish politicians, they don't see things like that. They don't consider things
Mm,
like, okay, this is the situation of the Ummah. We're all Muslim brothers, and that. This is not how it goes. Yani. This is a sovereign
mm,
state. It
mm.
thinks about its own interests, and it was only luckily for us that their interests were overlapping with our interests. And even
Subhanallah.
later on in 2024, 23, only before the liberation started, Turkey had given up
Mm,
the hope on the rebel forces. Turkey was ready to meet
incredible.
with Bashar al-Assad.
Yes, yes, yes.
Turkish President Erdogan said twice that he wants to meet Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad made a joke about him. He said,
Yeah.
why should we meet up to drink some juice or what? He made a
Mm.
joke, and Bashar al-Assad, a guy like that, he made a joke out of Turkish President Erdogan. So Turkey had given up. Turkey
And
had
would you
given up the
consider
hope
this?
on the rebel forces, and they were quite surprised. They were quite surprised by
Mm.
the battle, and they were quite surprised by the liberation of
Well,
Syria.
we will definitely get there. So that's very, very interesting insight. Tell me now a little bit about. So we're sort of at this point where, because of Turkey's intervention, things have settled again, right? So they've stabilized and obviously there's political discussions and sort of conversations which have allowed it to get to that point where things are now at a stalemate again. And that's at about 2020, isn't it? Between
Yes.
then and 2024 and the liberation, what happens in these 4 years? In as brief a summary as you can, what happens to prepare for this big push? And I understand that it's not a linear progression. Like, there were internal pressures, especially after October 7, and the frustrations of the Mujahideen with the leadership under Jolani saying we should be fighting as well. We shouldn't be sitting and the fronts should not be frozen. Tell me a little bit about that dynamic, those 3 or 4 years, in as summarized a fashion as you can, where it goes from just surviving off the back of this Russian offensive and being ready to push towards this battle that took place and toppling Bashar. How would you summarize that?
Basically, every battle comes with its barakah. Akhi. That battle came with its barakah. The barakah of that battle in 2019 and 20, the push of Russia towards Idlib, the biggest barakah and the biggest positive result of those battles was the operations room of Fath al-Mubin. Fath al-Mubin operations room was established, which included every fighting faction in Idlib. So basically, the Mujahideen and the leadership have decided that we need to be commanded by one command operation room. We can't be just every group just does how it wants, and then the enemy finds the weaker spots of the front lines and they enter from those weaker spots into our areas. So we need to basically have one operations room. Everyone who wants to fight in Idlib has to be in this operations room. Other than that, they can't be fighting. That's it. That's the red line. We cross these red lines now. We can't take a bigger risk than this. We have lost most of the areas that we're controlling. We are literally enclaved and stuck in a little place with 4.5 million civilians, which we carry the responsibility to protect for them. So now we have to take things more seriously. Now, one command room, Fath al-Mubin operations room. So what happened from this Fath al-Mubin operations room basically is that they have established also now a military academy. So they have decided to train and develop their leadership, their commanders. This is when they've
And which year is this exactly, the establishment of this sort of military academy concept? Is that 2020, 2021? When would
I
you
think,
point
if
that?
I'm not wrong, it was somewhere between 2020 and 2021. It was at
Yeah.
that time. I don't wanna be
And do
totally
you
wrong.
isolate that as like as a key moment in the turning of a much more professional sort of fighting unit, a much more united one? Obviously, talking about the control room, the operations room, the united operations room. Is that sort of where you place the genesis of what eventually ended up happening?
Of course, because now what happened is what happened is the Mujahideen turned into, from a guerrilla warfare tactic organizations, that was also different organizations and split organizations, which everyone had their own plans and own goals and own areas to liberate. It turned into a military style, commanded by one group of command, by one leadership. And also now, in this way, they could now evaluate the commanders and the people, their military leadership. Okay, what qualities do you have? What qualities do you have? What are you lacking in? What do you have? So basically now the heavy weaponry was set to be commanded by this guy. The let's say the tank units was commanded and controlled totally by this guy. The anti-tank missile brigades was commanded by this, so each profession or branch of the military basically was now all united. Like, okay, you have anti-tank missiles, bring them here. You bring them here. You bring them here. This is our center now. From this center, we are going to decide where we are going to set the anti-tank missiles, as an example. So
Incredible.
basically, it got much more and well organized now, and it was all under one command. So this way they could now use and utilize their resources in the most beneficial and most best way, and the leadership knew where this is being utilized, this is being used, and this is being used. So this way now, when they saw now, okay, you are lacking in this, you are lacking in that, and this guy is lacking in this. Okay, now let's raise our levels all into one level. Let's understand the discipline of army, military. Let's make a research. So now they opened a research center, which started doing research on foreign militaries. Okay, how do militaries develop their soldiers? How do militaries develop their commanders? What do we have to do? What are the standards of being a commander? So
it was a real transition from like guerrilla sort of factional warfare to much more military sort of type discipline. In a nutshell.
Of course, and this is what prepared them for this, for this victory.
So this is sort of like happening in on one track, and it's slowly sort of chipping away, getting ready, and doing all that sort of stuff. But in parallel, there were some problems, wasn't there, in Idlib? And I think I'd love to just briefly talk about that in terms of the pressure from. And you tell us about it. I mean, this is just what we have heard, that there was some pressure, there was some frustration about the lack of fighting. There was some issues with the internal security apparatus. Obviously, there was the infamous death of one formerly very senior member of the, I guess, the HTS group. And there was lots of questions and discussions about what's happened in the jails and so forth. How would you summarize that? And the challenges of keeping the Mujahideen united at a time when they want to fight because they're seeing what's happening to their brothers and sisters in Gaza. They think that they should be fighting. What's the dynamic there? How would you place all of that together into what you've painted for us of the picture of much more organized military? But something there's got to be a spark, and I guess there was this sort of tension bubbling away. What's your perspective on that?
Of course, it was a big lecture for the leadership also, that they have to, have an eye on the security apparatus also, and that they don't end up with their internal issues just to be like the Assad regime, where prisons become, slaughterhouses. And unfortunately, there were many cases where there was big mistakes conducted in prisons. People were being oppressed in those prisons, unfortunately, of HTS. And they only realized when their own people were arrested, because there was a big file of spies. So many people were arrested from inside, from within HTS. Also higher commanders and all that. So in the end of the day, it all turned out to be a big mistake, or even maybe a big game by some of the the outside entities that that gave wrong information to those people leading those files of the spy files. But in the end of the day, it gave a big lecture and a lesson to the leadership that we have to take more care of our prisons, of our justice system, and there has to be a protocol. It can't be just people can't be just arrested on accusations, and then they've been held for months in prisons and nobody even knows about them. No, there has to be a protocol. Now, if you arrest them, you have 48 hours to bring forth what's it called, a piece of evidence for the accusation that you make against this person. You can't bring no evidence after 48 hours. He has to be released. So basically, this big mistake and this big fitna, has taught them a lesson that they have to set protocols in the prison system, in the way of arresting people, in all this. And it was a big fitna again. It was a very big fitna, internal fitna. And many of the military commanders inside HTS have sat down back home, turned off their radio systems, and said, "That's it for me. This is done."
Subhanallah.
And there was a
As in
big,
that
big.
I'm no longer part of the jihad. It's gone wrong. Do you mean something like that?
Exactly. If we are going to end up oppressing our own people and
Subhanallah.
doing this, I'm done.
So
I didn't raise against the Assad regime just to be another Assad regime.
Yeah, that's right. No, exactly what I heard when I was on the ground. So was it? Tell us about how that comes together. So that dynamic, and obviously that led to a lot of pressure on Jawlani to fix what was happening in the prison systems, and there was accusations against him as well. But also this, like, what's happening in the Ummah, and some of the other factors that you discussed last time, in terms of anyone with a brain can see the weakness of Russia, the weakness of Hezbollah in this sort of mid 2024 phase. So take us from that point where all these factors are happening. You've got the military preparation, you've got the fitna, and that's putting political pressure on the leadership and Jawlani and so forth. And then you've got the weakness of Hezbollah and Russia, etc. How does this all come together in those months, the second half of 2024, to then become the liberation of Syria? What's that final phase look like? Tell us about that.
I think the whole situation, Allah just put everything into the place that the leadership just understood that, Allah wants us to open the battles. This is it. Even if we are not prepared fully for this battle yet, but Allah just gives us every message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could give to us, except that Jibreel alayhi salam didn't come down and tell us that to open the fronts. The whole situation just says to us to open the fronts. Russia is involved in Ukraine too much and is deep in the Ukrainian mud. They are busy with that. Russia is even pulled out many of its pilots and many of its airplanes, fighter jets from Syria to go to Ukraine. Many of its commanders even pulled out to go to Ukraine. And Iran is being busy with the hits of Israel. Hezbollah, Lebanese Hezbollah Shia militias, they are just being erased from the face of the earth by Israel in Lebanon. So they are weak also. The Assad regime is finished anyway since 2015, because until Iran and Russia got involved, the Mujahideen were marching towards Idlib, Jisr Shughur, just as that, until Iran and Russia came and got involved. Actually, Qasem Soleimani gone to Russia to bring Putin and convince him to get involved in Syria. Just for that access of resistance people, the situation was just fitting. And like you said, the internal struggle was just putting a big pressure. There had to be something to change the topic, to get the people's minds off this big fitna that just happened, that, we've accused our own people of being spies and put them in prisons, and they've been tortured in prisons. This had to be, it had to be erased off the minds of the people. We had to, do something good now. This is what they think at this situation, I guess. And militarily, I think they were ready by 40% for a battle, which needed to be 100%. But Allah Azza wa Jal, Allah Azza wa Jal, better, Allah Azza wa Jal says, and prepare, and tawakkal Allah,
So it really is like a case of things came together. There wasn't some sort of, like, some people try to treat him like he had it all figured out every step along the way. But I think even him, Jawlani, this is, in fairness, and I'm keen to sort of understand some of the things that are said about him. We'll get to that in a second. Really, it came together. It's tawfiq from Allah. Like, it really is the coming together of divine plan, isn't it? It wasn't like he knew everything that was going to happen and it was all mapped out.
I tell you something on that. I spoke to one of the highest military commanders before the battle started by 1 week. And I say to him, because I saw the preparations. There was big preparations. It was trying to be held private and secret. But here on the ground, we were seeing, and because you are seeing the tanks moving, and you are seeing,
SubhanAllah.
you see things on the ground, and you are seeing your friends that you know and that you meet up with. They're all of a sudden so busy that even his wife is complaining to your wife that her husband is barely coming home since weeks. So you get all these information
Incredible.
and think like, oh,
Incredible.
what's going on? What's going on? There's something.
Yeah.
So I spoke to one of the highest military commanders there that I know very good, alhamdulillah. And I asked him, I met with him, and I said to him, what's going on? Is this really going to happen? And he said to me, yes. I say to him, how? Like, how do you plan to do this? And it's kind of a crazy plan, because like we are struggling to protect Idlib. Do you think it's a good idea to start a battle right now and to go for
SubhanAllah.
Aleppo city? Aleppo city, bro, we're gonna be happy if you take Saraqib. What Aleppo
SubhanAllah.
city? How are you planning to march to Aleppo city?
So,
And the
so
Aleppo city,
even Aleppo was seen as too big to conquer, to
Akhi, we have
take
to
over.
understand one thing. Aleppo is the real capital of Syria. It's just like in Turkey, Ankara and Istanbul. Ankara is not worthy to Turkey as Istanbul. Istanbul is the hub, is the capital, is the metropole, is where business goes, where investments goes. Who invests in Ankara? But Ankara is the capital. Is the same here. Okay, Damascus is a very historical city, but
Yeah,
so is
yeah.
Aleppo. And Aleppo
Yeah.
is the city of industry, is the city of chemical production, medicine production, is the city of fabric, texture and fabric, and
Yes,
and tailors, and like factories that tailor clothes. Most of the clothes of Syria come from Aleppo. So Aleppo is the hub, is the heart of Syria with regards to economy. So Aleppo is very important for the Assad regime. So basically, he said to me, yes, Akhi, we're going to go for Aleppo. I said, so what's the plan? And then after, what is the plan? He said exactly in his words, he said, Sheikh Jolani said in the meeting yesterday that if we manage to take Aleppo city in a very short time, that means the Assad regime and the enemy is gone. We are going to continue until the south. Because if they give up Aleppo city so easily against us, we will just continue until Hama, Homs, Sham, wherever Allah stops us. No
SubhanAllah. So
matter.
his perspective was that if Aleppo falls, it means that the regime is done, and it's just a matter of
Yes.
time until everything else. Whereas I think a lot of other people felt you take Aleppo, then you consolidate, and then later you try for the other cities. But in his view, if you get that, then you get everything, basically.
That's it. Because once you break this, we have to understand militarily, once you break the front, you just continue until you can. Because why? We have to understand the enemy, he has only 2 defensive lines, 3 defensive lines, but it wouldn't have a defensive line in Hama or in Homs. Why would he? It's like right in the heart of his controlled areas. He would never fear that the battles will reach Hama or Homs. That's why he would have never prepared himself to defend Hama and Homs. So basically, the whole defensive lines were in the south of Idlib, towards the north of Hama, and in the west of Aleppo, towards the city of Aleppo. This was the most thingy. So once those defensive lines broke, and the enemy saw the Mujahideen, they are totally serious about this. They not. I don't think they're gonna stop. And then you reached Hama, you take Hama, and then the Mujahideen got in contact with Russia and said, look, you need to be in Syria. You can make deals with me also. No problem. Just stop hitting me right now. Let me deal with this Assad regime. And after that, we're going to sit down and we talk about your business. What do you have to do in Syria? You need Tartus. You need a port to the Mediterranean Sea. I'll give it to you. Just relax right now. Just, pull back, sit down. Don't hit me. I'm not going to attack your soldiers that are in Hmaymim Air Base. I'm going to protect them. As long as you leave me alone right now, just leave me one-on-one. Like
and
a
I
street
think
fight. Leave me one-on-one with the Assad regime. This is my thing now. I'm going to deal with it.
This is what's come out recently, isn't it? In some of the interviews with Jolani in the Al-Akhbariya, interview that he did last Friday, I think, where for the first time this question was asked, and he said explicitly, this is what happened. Once we started advancing on Hama and Homs, we had a chat to the Russians, and we said, our fight is with Assad, we'll deal with you later. We won't attack if you don't attack. And I think that's what panned out. And I guess there is one question that raises, which I'm keen to ask you. And the question is, the Russians have committed a lot of crimes against the Muslims of Syria. Now to see Shabani, Jolani sitting in meetings with them, how does that make the Mujahideen feel? Do they accept that this is just part of statecraft? You have to talk to even your enemies. Does it hurt to see that? Is it we won and it's ours now? And this was never personal. It was never about being anti-Muslim. It was about sort of being anti the people who are against his ally Assad. How do you process that? How do you process that as a Muslim, as a supporter of the Mujahideen? Like how do the people in Idlib and the victors of the Syrian revolution, how do they process this issue?
I actually had this kind of similar discussion yesterday, last night. We were sitting somewhere with some brothers, and we were talking exactly about this subhanAllah issue. And they were saying to me, he asked me, he said, what is the difference between Iran and Russia? Why do we not agree to sit down with Iran right now? And why did we sit down with Russia from the beginning? Of course, in the early stages of the liberation, it was hard to see for the Mujahideen that now, that the leadership is sitting down with Russia and that they are agreeing to some deals and that they agreed to keep Russia in Syria. I'm sorry, they couldn't understand that. But now they understand it, like you said, because it's part of statecraft and it's not as black and white as it always seems to be. So there has to be diplomacy and policy, and this is a part of all of this. So, but now to add my answer also to what is the difference to the brother's question from yesterday, because it's important to know also, is what is the difference between Iran and Russia? Why don't we sit down with Iran as we did sit down with Russia? This is the summary of the answer. Russia was here in Syria because of its interest in the Middle East. Russia's only military base in the Middle East until the war in Libya now, and they have now a base in Libya also just recently, 3-4 years ago. But up until then, Russia had its only military base in the whole Middle East in Syria. So Syria was very important for Russia. Russia had made big investments into Russia, so they into Syria. I'm sorry. So they came only to protect its interests, its investment into this country, into the strategic country which connects the Middle East, so Asia and the East, to the West. Basically, it's a bridge from the Mediterranean Sea. You open up to whole Europe and the whole West. But whereas Iran conducted and is conducting a battle of aqidah, a battle of ideology. They have come here to erase the Sunni population and to demographically change the whole situation of Syria. They have forced Sunni populations out of their lands, and they have brought Shia people from across the globe, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from Iran, from Iraq, from Lebanon, into Syria. They have paid them salaries. They have given them free houses for them only to live in Syria, for them only to produce children, for them only to spread the Shiism. They have opened muta offices. They have opened dawah centers. They have gone to Sunni masajid and mosques, and they have turned them into Shia temples. And they have conducted their dawah. Basically, they have tried to implement their Shia Crescent project in Syria. So this battle is not the same as this battle, because this battle will never end. This battle will never end. This battle of ideologies will never end until someone dies. He will die for his ideology. Whereas this battle of Russia, it's only maslaha. It's only things about his benefits. So you can go sit down with him and say, what is it what you want? I want 1, 2, 3. Okay, bro, I can give you 1 and 2. 3 is a bit okay, no problem. As long as you give me 1 and 2, I agree. But you can't sit down with Iran and say to him, okay, bro, can you please stop invading Yemen and Iraq and Lebanon and Syria? You can't say that to them, because their whole existence since the Ayatollahs, since the 80s in Iran, reason for existence is this Shia Crescent project of the Middle East, lying to the Ummah, lying to the Muslims and the Juhal and the ignorant people of their own followers that the cause is about Palestine.
Yeah, and I mean, look,
And
that's a separate
how
episode
less they
that
care
we will.
about a child that dies right now in Gaza.
No, absolutely. We will definitely deep dive into that in a subsequent episode. The idea of the crescent and your perspective on that. So we'll definitely go to that. But that's a very interesting answer, and I thank you for that. So let's now, for the last few minutes of today, and I'm conscious of your time. Let's talk about the final push. So tell us about the days of November. So you've already mentioned the preparations that were going on, what you saw with your eyes. Tell us about, obviously accompanying the Mujahideen as all of this happened. Take us from, when this started. What was there a day where you remember it was all systems go, like everyone knew that that's it, the march on Aleppo had started. Take us from there to that famous video of yours in Damascus where you are walking into the Umayyad Masjid.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah. So basically 2 days before the battle, I got a call. And they say to me to come and to come prepared to stay for a few days. So I knew now, okay, it's serious. They really are serious, and even they say to me, come, I'm sorry, I need to reposition a little bit. And
No,
they
no.
say to me, come with a cross bike. Come with a bike. Don't come on with your car. So I went to sell my car to buy a cross bike, to pack my stuff in a backpack, and to go there. Basically, they called me to the Western Aleppo countryside. So now I came into the military base of the brothers. And I sat down with the brother who called me, who was in charge of the axis of the Western Aleppo side, which started the whole battle basically. And he's a good friend of mine, and he said to me, "Are you ready?" I said, "For what am I ready?" He said, "We're going to start the battle." I said, "Yeah, of course we are ready. We're waiting for years, on this news. So let's do it, bro. And." And so they were waiting now for 2 days because they had sent special forces into Aleppo, behind the enemy lines, forces basically. And there was 4 groups, which each group is 8 to 10 brothers. They have invaded, basically. They have marched, secretly through the front lines of the enemies for at least 15, 20 kilometers inside the city of Aleppo, in Aleppo, Halab al-Jadida, in a new Aleppo neighborhood is called. And they have hid in a house there of one of their relatives. And they were waiting basically for them to get there and get ready, because once they start the battle, they wanted them to go and start attacking the enemy from the back, basically, to shock the enemy. Basically, like, so the enemy is going to think, like, what's going on now? The fire was coming from the front, now it's coming from the city. They reached the city already. So to cause confusion, basically, and also to go and attack the operations room of the enemy, so they can.
So this is getting behind enemy lines basically and attacking from the back.
Exactly. Also, their mission and their job was also including the kamikaze drones, including the Shaheen brigades. Their mission was to cause confusion and to cut telecommunication between the leadership and the soldiers on the front lines. So basically, the Shaheen brigades.
For those of our brothers
Yes.
and sisters who may not be aware, tell us about the Shaheen brigades just a little bit, inshallah.
Basically, Shaheen brigades is something that the Mujahideen are working on since 2016. The people always say like that the Ukrainian war brought the FPV drone warfare into the world. It's not true. The Mujahideen were just not talking about it, and we're keeping it secretly. But in 2016, the Mujahideen already made a test flight, and they were able to fly a drone, a self-made drone, far as 8 kilometers, and hit a target, pinpoint target. So basically, since 2016, the Mujahideen were working already in developing drones and drone technology with their own resources. So the Shaheen brigade is basically a drone brigade, which includes kamikaze drones, which basically the drone flies with its whole body and the rocket into the target and blows up. Basically, and all the same we see in Ukraine. I don't know if people follow up, or ballistic missiles. Basically, they had also ballistic missiles. Basically, ballistic missile means that you can control the missile after shooting it also. So you shoot it in the air and you still can control the guide it to its target, basically. So they had these, and they have also they have also drones that drop little bombs, basically.
So these brigades are sort of part of the liberation battle, and it's a very important part of sort of cutting off the supply lines and the communication lines and causing that confusion.
100%. The Shaheen brigades, they have targeted the operations room of the Russians and the Iranians in Aleppo, basically, and this is when the soldiers on the fronts lost contact to their commanders. So it caused now so much confusion. Now, so imagine now you're a soldier of the Assad regime. May Allah preserve us from it. But just to imagine for the viewers, you're on the front lines trying to defend the front lines. Now, your enemy, which is the Mujahideen at that point, started a large offensive on you, and you can see it because they come in vast numbers and heavy weaponry. And now all of a sudden you're speaking to your commander. He says, yes, hold up, and we are going to send reinforcements and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you lose control with you lose contact to your commander. You're trying to on the radio talk to him. There is no contact anymore. So you think now either the contact is cut or either they are killed. So now confusion starts growing inside your heart, and now all of a sudden people are starting shooting at you from your back also. So this is when confusion started in the lines of the enemy, and they have just started to give up and just retreat. That's why Aleppo fall in 2 days, not because there was a big plan to hand over everything to Jolani. This was not the thing. There was plans made on the ground and preparations made on the ground by the Mujahideen and the tawfiq of Allah Azza wa Jal. It was not because I really hate this of us Muslims. We have this I don't know what's it called, like this Islam mentality. Help me please with the English word for it. Like
like defeatist mentality that nothing
yes,
can,
yes,
we can't
yes.
do anything.
We are so defeated in our minds, and this is the most important thing we Muslims should work on. We should get stronger minds, that if something really crazy and really good happens, this is probably a project of the Zionists. This is probably a project. Why, bro?
It's a
why
very common thing. America was behind it. America had agreed.
Exactly. America, yes. America gave it to Jolani. Look, now America is every second day meeting with Jolani. This is only a whole deal. If not, maybe even Jolani was maybe raised in America, and he was probably also, he studied in America probably also, and they prepared him for all this big day since 20 years. We get like out crazy, theories and conspiracies, and it's not. This is not the case. There was serious preparation. I'm telling you, the drone brigades, the Mujahideen were preparing since 2016. Even the naval forces. I don't know if you came across my report. I made the report after the liberation by 1 or 2 months. I made a report on the naval forces. The Mujahideen were training naval forces in 2016 in lake sites and river sites in Idlib, when they had no naval, where they had no sea, but they were preparing for the days. One day, maybe Allah may open up the lands to us and we may reach the sea. At that point, we will have to have at least a few hundred soldiers that are prepared to work as naval forces. And they had it. And the brother who was in charge of the training in 2016 of the brothers to train them on naval forces is today the commander of the naval. So there was serious preparations by the Muslims.
We've seen the recent videos coming out of the new Syrian army's sort of emerging navy. I'm guessing he's involved
even
yesterday
or the day before, they published a promo on the naval forces. So basically, most of those brothers, they were already training on naval capabilities in 2016 and 17 in lake sites and in the river of Orontes of the Nahr al-Asi in Idlib. Because they were preparing for this day. This is why Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَعَدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Allah Azza wa Jalla orders you. Allah Azza wa Jalla gives you the order, just as He gives you the order to pray. Allah Azza wa Jalla orders you to prepare. As long as you prepare, Allah will bring the asbab. Allah Azza wa Jal غني عن كل شيء أخي. Allah Azza wa Jal قادر على كل شيء. Allah Azza wa Jal is able to do anything and everything, and Allah can just كن فيكون. Allah Azza wa Jal can just give the order and can make the situation for you right to start a battle, can make the situation for you to liberate Palestine, to liberate Aqsa, to liberate wherever.
So this happens, right? And we're talking about Aleppo now, and Aleppo falls as a result of these sort of the confusion that's created. Tell me a little bit about the fall of Aleppo and the few minutes that we have left, how one city after another fell in the lead up to Damascus.
Basically, Aleppo and Hama was the most difficult parts, because in Aleppo, basically, it took like 2 days, to break the fronts still, because even if there was confusion, there was still, people who were fighting for a cause in the Assad regime, apparently for whatever reason, so for 2 days, it took the Mujahideen to break the enemy defensive lines, the first and the second defensive lines, to break through it and to reach the city of Aleppo. So once they reached the city of Aleppo, they of course, the Mujahideen had started multiple fronts, not just the western Aleppo front. They had already started also the south of Idlib. I even reported it. I went to Aleppo first, and then I came to the east and south of Idlib towards the Saraqib sites. The other day, I made a report also from there, where the Mujahideen started a front also towards Saraqib. The Mujahideen had dug tunnels, and they had put into the tunnels rail systems, and they made little boards where they can lie on, and they can, like, with a little joystick, with electricity, with electric motors, can guide themselves through this tunnel, and the tunnel was coming out again behind the enemy lines. So these are all preparations. This is not because America wanted Syria to fall in the hands of Jolani. There was serious preparations by the Mujahideen. It's very belittling towards the Mujahideen to say something like that. The Mujahideen have prepared years long for this battle, so just to oversee their sacrifice and their hard work is very disrespectful towards the Mujahideen. So basically, there was a tunnel system. They and they made rail systems inside it, and little boats, like a first aid boat, like whatever it's called, like an emergency boat. So they were lying on it with their whole equipment, driving into the unknown. Don't know if you're gonna come out and the enemy knows the tunnel already and waiting there to kill you. You don't know what will happen. So basically, at the Aleppo front, after the Aleppo front started, after 1 day, they started the front on Saraqib, also in the east of Idlib, towards Saraqib, and this is how they started it again, with enemy behind the enemy line forces, which went there through tunnels, underground tunnels, which were coming out behind the enemies. So this is when they started also from there. So they started pushing basically from Aleppo and the east towards the south of Idlib, towards the north of Hama now. They were pushing like from multiple fronts towards those areas basically.
Before we talk about that, just tell me a little bit about the feeling amongst the Mujahideen. So Aleppo has fallen, and the Ummah is now watching what's going on all around the world, right? This is now massive news everywhere, that the city of Aleppo has fallen and this revolution has sprung back to life. Of course, it always had life, but people weren't following it closely. Yeah. How did it feel on the ground? And what was the anticipation and the feeling amongst the people? And at what point did you or the Mujahideen start feeling, hang on a second, this is something incredible going on. We could go all the way here.
Yeah, this was after Aleppo. After Aleppo, when they said, the first night of Aleppo, when the Mujahideen entered now parts of Aleppo, and the other day they called me, they said, come to Eastern Idlib and do a report here. We are starting the front here. This is when I realized now, and this is not just about Aleppo, we are going to go. But up until here, still I'm thinking like it's going to be just Aleppo and the old areas that we were controlling of Idlib until the north of Hama, and this is where we're going to stop. This is still what I'm thinking, and that's why I'm still using my cross bike. I'm driving with a cross bike in the winter, hundreds of kilometers at that point still. I still didn't think like, okay, now this is going to go towards Hama. I need to get rid of my cross bike. I need to get my car back again and move around with the car again, because this is not possible to do with the bike, and it was freezing cold, bro.
Yes, it was very cold in Syria.
So when I realized Now, this is more about Aleppo. This was on the third day when they basically already took over the south of Idlib and now entered north of Hama, and we reached the hilltop of Zain al-Abidin and Qumhana, all those areas where the enemy again, resisted for 3 days in Qumhana and Jabal Zain al-Abidin, which is a very strategic hilltop that overlooks the whole city of Hama, basically. Basically, if that hilltop drops and falls into the hands of the Mujahideen, that's it. It's over for them. They have to pull back until Homs, probably. So when I reached there, that was the last point I came with the bike. I said to myself, man, this is more than about just Aleppo and Idlib, man. I need to get rid of this bike and get myself a car to move around. I can't do this, These guys are serious. So I called up the same military commander that told me 1 week before the battle started, basically. And I called him and I said, what's going on? What's the plan? Where do you want to stop? Like where does the Sheikh think, Sheikh meaning, Ahmed Shara today, And I was saying, like, where do they plan to stop? He said, there is no stopping anymore. Akhi. Inshallah, in 1 week, we will pray together in Damascus.
Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah.
I say to him, Wallah, akhi, I have goosebumps right now. Wallahi, akhi, it's emotional. Akhi. I say to him, what do you mean, akhi? Is this even realistic, akhi? Like, how are we going to, how are you planning to control those areas? It's vast areas, man. Like we are barely controlling Idlib. How are you going to control all those areas? He said, okay, Allah has a plan for us. We're just going to tawakkal Allah. We made our preparations. We will continue, akhi, wherever Allah, lets us reach. So
Subhanallah.
Then the Hama front.
And then in the coming days, one after the other, all the cities fell, and in you went into Damascus.
The most emotional. I mean, there was a lot of emotional moments throughout the liberation. The first emotional. I think in Aleppo I was still okay. Because it was just Aleppo city. I was very happy. Of course, every Muslim was very happy and very excited. But for years, the motivation of the Muslims was to free the prisoners. For years. So the most emotional moment of mine was when we reached Hama. And we were in front of the prison in Hama. I even have a selfie video there, and I think you can even see me having tears in my eyes, because I was there in Hama, akhi. Wallahi, I was hearing little children screaming for their fathers that they are missing for years. That they had the hope that their father's gonna run out of the prisons, akhi. And then I saw people running out of the prisons. Most of them lost their minds, akhi. They didn't know what's going on. They couldn't speak. Most of them couldn't speak from the amount of torture that they were put through. They couldn't speak. They didn't know. People were sitting on the side of the streets. They didn't know where their house is, where their families are, who they are themselves. You were asking them questions. Maybe you saw those videos. You were asking him, who are you? And he was saying 318. He was saying his prisoner number, basically. He didn't know his own name. These people had lost their mind. And these moments were very emotional moments. There were very emotional moments.
No, I can imagine.
This is when it started, basically. So they reached Hama. And from Hama, they were continuing to Homs. Basically, between Hama and Homs is only 40 kilometers. It's not much.
Yes, very short distance.
Once the Mujahideen reached Hama, the people of Rastan and Talbisa, which were always rebellious people and which also were evacuated by green buses to Idlib, but some of them, they did reconciliations and they stayed in Talbisa and Rastan, like the people of Dar'a, they stayed in Dar'a also. They did reconciliations in the earlier days, and they stayed in those areas. Basically, once the Mujahideen reached Hama, the people of Talbisa and Rastan dug out their weapons that they had digged under the ground years ago. And they have started raising against the Assad regime in Talbisa and Rastan. So until the Mujahideen reached Talbisa and Rastan, which is the north of Homs, basically south of Hama, the Talbisa and Rastan were already controlled by the people. The Mujahideen just walked into the people and were being just welcomed and hugged, and so from there on it was a past thing.
It was a domino. One city after another just fell.
Exactly, it was a domino. We were praying Fajr. I just want to say this last point before I know I'm talking too much. And
no.
we were in Homs and we were praying Fajr. This was the morning of the liberation.
Subhanallah.
We were praying in Homs, and we were in a private hospital in Homs. We just saw a private hospital. It had electricity and some warm water, and we were hoping to find some internet, because now we were in as a regime-controlled areas. Our internet, our cellular SIM cards, they were not working anymore. So we were hoping the private hospital, it was looking really nice and big building. We were hoping they probably have internet and some warm water to wash up and to, because we didn't have showers, dusty these days, So basically, we went there, and we were praying now Fajr, and we had obviously we have all radios now to follow up what's going on, and I was leading Salah, and in the radio they said Bashar al-Assad just ran away.
Allahu Akbar.
My whole khushu is gone, bro. I was reciting Surah al-Baqarah. I changed to Surah Ikhlas, middle in Salah. I forgot half of the ayat that I knew at that moment when I heard that in the radio. I didn't know what to do. I just Surah Ikhlas, bro. Just quick, finished the prayer. I gave salam. I looked at the brothers in the back. I said, "Did you just hear the same what I heard in the radio?" They say, "Yeah, what's going on?" So I asked in the radio. Now I said, "What are you saying?" He said, "Bashar al-Assad just ran away. He's gone to Hamimim Air Base to run away to Russia." This is when we decided now to, khalas. We are going
every
to
man for
Damascus,
himself,
brother.
Everyone's
We are
going
going
to
to pray.
Yes.
We are going to pray duha in Masjid al-Amawi, bro.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu
And
Akbar.
alhamdulillah, Allah allowed us to go there and to open the doors of Masjid al-Amawi and to live those very special and very, historic moments with the Ummah and with the Mujahideen and with the Muslimin. And this is a great honor and blessing that Allah Azza wa Jal, gave upon us. Alhamdulillah.
Incredible. What a story. My dear brother Abdul Samad, I know we've sort of run over time a little bit. We will definitely have you back for another episode to talk about some of the contentions since the liberation of Syria, about the leadership, about some of the controversies, Syria, Palestine, Islamic rule, Sharia, all of those sorts of things. Today's was a very important episode to actually understand for people how the days of the revolution connect to what's happening now. For a lot of people, this is a black box because people were not following, frankly, what was going on. So you've really helped us do something incredible. And I thank you for that. Thank you for that very, very deeply. Thank you for sharing with us such an incredible story, your story, what you saw, how the government, the Salvation Government was created in Idlib, the preparations, the challenges, that ultimately was Allah who was behind this. And now, Allahu Alam, what happens in the future. So really, Jazakallah khair. There will be follow-up questions, I'm sure. People will ask some questions in the comments of this episode, and then we will bring you back and ask some of those questions to you and address some of the contentions. So the juicy part is still to come for everyone in this series. And we look forward very, very much to our brother Abdul Samad joining us again. Akhi, thank you very much for your presence. Jazakumullah khair. Stay close because we're going to get you on again very, very soon. But what a story. May Allah bless you, your family, the people of Bilad al-Sham. And we look forward to chatting again very, very soon, inshallah.
Jazakallah khairan for your efforts and for having us and to give us this platform. And may Allah reward you all. And thank you to all the viewers. And Jazakumullah khairan. I hope, we can explain some of the things that consider important to the Muslim Ummah.
And we will be back with another episode to continue this series, inshallah, very, very soon. Until then, dear brothers and sisters, it is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.